From Raleigh, North Carolina, it's Westworld with Jay, Jack, and Mike, a podcast dedicated to HBO's Westworld. This week we'll analyze, discuss, theorize, and recap the season finale of Season 2, The Passenger. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Westworld with Jay, Jack, and Mike. My name is Jay.
My name is Mike.
And I'm Logan, and I approve this message.
And welcome to the show. Sorry, Jack. I mean, I don't feel like we can quite say your Logan is the mastermind of it all. I mean, where do we decide on this?
Well, because people said, will he have an important part to play later on? I kept thinking, of course he will. Of course he will. And I guess it's kind of important. I don't know.
But it wasn't him. It was just he, assumed that form. It was like Jodie Foster's dad at the end of Contact, #spoiler alert.
Whoa,
where it wasn't really her dad. It was just assuming the form because he had to play all the roles.
Someone on our Twitter page said Jack can get a cha-ching out of this, so cha-ching.
Was that one of your many bot accounts, Jack?
Yeah. It was actually not mine, so there you go.
That was the cha-ching of your money going to their PayPal account for posting that tweet.
Hey, whatever works. Hey,
so random. Well,
we were all happy to see Logan.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff to get into, but I don't know. A little random, I think. I mean, I'm always glad to see Ben Barnes back, and obviously you want that physical representation of the Forge to sort of have a conversation with, but I don't know. It's maybe, I mean, were they in the personal memories of Delos and that's why Logan appeared? Or was it just well, we need someone to represent this who's not inherently involved in the action? Logan. Yeah, they said that you didn't come back to the park, but that makes you a perfect observer to this all.
Well, I think what it was is they said, I listened to this podcast. And this guy is always saying they should just bring back Logan. So that's what I'm assuming that's what they did.
I mean, I would say that took place, probably a year ago at this point. But considering how much timeline jumping we've been doing over the course of season 2, this really is par for the course.
Well, I guess, is there a better person to pick? Because the explanation works for me, especially watching it a second time when, Dolores said, you weren't here. You wouldn't have a copy here because once William took over, you didn't come back. So that would explain how she's able to pick him out. And then that Logan or System Logan, I think I tied it up to put him in the notes as System of Logan. That, he said that he played all the roles, that weren't Delos. But since she kind of picked out that Logan wouldn't have a copy here, and he just kind of just went with that being the form. But I guess to your point, Mike, would there have been a better choice as the manifestation of the system of Forge?
I can't think of one. But it also gave Logan some closure. I think his character some closure. We knew that he died of a heroin overdose. But then you can see his final scene, his final time he spoke with his dad.
We keep saying that every time. Right, this is the last time we're seeing it, right? We've filled in the coloring book that is Logan, but it seems like there are always these little blank spaces of white left that we need to color in a bit more.
But it was kind of his dad was playing hardball with him, right? I mean, it's hard to fault the dead. It's hard to fault the dead. You clean yourself up, you can come back in.
Well, let's just say
I've hit the bottom, Dad. I've hit the bottom.
If season 1 was our Deddy Teddy count, season 2 of Westworld, Jack and Mike is definitely. This is the last time we're going to see Logan count, which I think we've had 4 this season in 10 episodes.
Yeah, Logan's last counter. Okay, he definitely won't come back after.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to call it right now. When the door closed and all the hosts that made it through, who's there to greet him? It's going to be Logan.
All right. Well, let's...
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Smiles.
Let's save the discussion for our recap. Our recap's going to be a little bit different today since it was pretty much a feature-length movie.
Basically, Jay didn't want to do it.
Writing dialogue or, everything for an hour and a half show, that's a bit much. We're going to focus on a lot of the main scenes and around our characters in this episode. We have a lot of listener feedback to get into, and I'm sure Jack's going to close out this season of the Lost Podcast with I'm sorry, not Lost Podcast. Woo, that's a slip of like 10 years
Wait,
ago.
I don't have to come up with a theory, do I?
You have to close it out. What's your crackpot theory of this season?
How is Logan going to get involved in Lost,
Well,
Jack?
I just exactly. He's part of Dharma.
Oh man, but
Well, then can I take back what I said about Logan greeting them, and then the.
It's up to you, Jack. This season you've been money. This season, I will give it to you. Your cha-ching noise. As much crap as I give you, Jack, and they may have been like softball guesses. You had a lot of stuff kind of come true. Mike, you had some good stuff as well, and I just had
that's such a great compliment. Yeah, I gave you credit. You kind of came through with stuff. So
that's called a soft compliment, Jack.
It's like, yeah, whatever. I'll throw you a bone.
I'm trying to say, I'm being the bigger person here and saying that I thought you did a great job this season, Jack.
That's not what you said, though.
It's kind of what I said.
Okay.
But yeah, so we have closed out season 2 in grand jumbo size fashion. Again, I think last season we had an extended finale episode, but I don't think it was quite an hour and a half. Was it last season?
It was.
It was an hour and a half as well. Okay, but
we were younger, so it didn't seem as long.
Wait, doesn't things go faster when you're older?
Not when you have to go to the bathroom and stuff like that. You have to keep pausing it and stuff. As you get older, things happen.
And we had another post-credit scene. So this is HBO's Marvel Cinematic Universe. But the post-credit scene in this one has a lot more people talking and probably a lot more people confused. So we'll try and dissect that and theorize about that for sure in our recap.
My first time watching it, I stopped. When the credits go, I go, wow, that was a lot to take in.
Oh.
And then I went on our Facebook page, and people said, you got to stay through the end of the credits. I go, all right, let me go back. So I was able to go to the end of the credits. I didn't have to
Jack,
watch the whole thing.
How quickly you forget the bemusing scene of Armistice sawing off her arm to create this big robotic arm that we saw basically nothing of this season.
Again, it was an hour and a half, and I'm like, I was drained. I needed a break. And then they throw this extra 3 or 4 minutes on there. I'm like going,
well, it'll be fun to discuss. I think there's a lot there. Again, probably the most discussion happened after the credits rolled for this episode, which is
I have a theory on this, but I'm sure someone's probably already brought it up.
Funny and ironic. Well, Jack, if nobody does it during the feedback, then you can maybe use that as your crackpot theory of the week.
All right, I will. Well, actually, I think I've already said it.
Okay.
But I mean, I said it on, I think, the last podcast.
Okay. All right. Well, before we get into that, I want to thank the people that make this show possible, our patrons over at patreon.com/Jay and Jack. And related to this show, there is a special podcast going on for our patrons, a Fartgate podcast. So the couple fart noises that have been pinged out of this show, which, again, I think it's silly. I think it's ridiculous that this is even happening. But for our listeners, it's a big topic, and a couple people in our community, as well as some other podcasters, are theorizing.
I'm actually on this one.
Conspiracy theorizing so much that they have started a true crime podcast that'll be a 6-parts mini-sodes exclusive to our patrons. And I think the first one will be on the Whole Enchilada feed. And so for any of our patrons, it's a special show. They're going to try and get to the conclusion on who dealt it. But
problem is, I don't trust the people leading the case.
Yeah, exactly. So
isn't that the point of Westworld? Is we're the hosts, but we found out this episode that the humans are the ones that are actually, those that have no free will. So it's sort of who is truly objective in this case. But I guarantee if people want to check it out, it is probably less confusing than the Westworld season 2 finale. Though who's to say?
But it'll be a fun thing going on this summer for our patrons. And again, that first episode will be for free on our Whole Enchilada feed, which you can find at janejack.com/iTunes. All right, so without any further ado, gentlemen, let's jump into this recap. All right. So we'll start with I kind of broke it down by the characters. And first up, we'll start with Bernard's memories and current timelines come full circle. Is this now?
Mm-hmm.
So Dolores decided to make a new version of Arnold, Bernard. After all, you didn't make it, did you? She says to him in the opening scene. Bernard goes with Dolores to the forge and kills Dolores before she can enact her plan. And with quote-unquote Ford's help, brings her back in a new body to get a drop on Carl and friends. He messed up his memory to keep his plan hidden. There's these beautiful moments of with Ford on a beach, and he is killed by Halores, but his pearl is extracted, and he is brought back in the outside world in his real-world home with a rebuilt Dolores, and I guess still Halores, or just a drone Hale, I don't know, and walks out of his home while Radiohead's Codex plays. So if Bernard's been the, I guess, Williams storyline of this season, where it's been jumping all over the place, I think Lisa Joy described it as kind of a noir crime solve where you kind of start out and it doesn't really know where everything, I guess Memento, another Nolan brother story, where it kind of pieces together this discombobulated memory of what happened to get to here. What did you think of the conclusion of this Bernard storyline that kind of jumped all over the place this season?
I mean, I'm glad that we got resolution. And, I don't want to start things off on too much of a down note, but we were sort of talking about this before we came on here, that I think if you compare the two finales, even though they're the same length, I would say that the season 1 finale felt much less like an hour and a half than this one. There was, even though there was a lot going on, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about, maybe it's just because we kept going back and forth to the same characters that it felt a bit more like, okay, we're going back to this again, and we're going to keep going back here. And so I was a little annoyed when we kept, we saved what happened with Bernard, with him personally, changing his memories until the very end when we finally get this resolution. On paper, you might think, was the juice worth the squeeze of all this? But I think that if we get into this reveal of, Dolores with Charlotte Hale in this most recent timeline, I think it's too early to say without rewatching the season, because I think that it definitely does color it in a very different way, especially Tessa Thompson's performance. She talks about it a bit in the behind the scenes about how much she had to really change her mannerisms to resemble Evan Rachel Wood's. And I think that if you watch it for that, it's a little early to say because, again, I haven't done it yet, but I feel like if you watch it back then, it's going to be much more satisfying and make sense. Whereas at the time, we were like, okay, why are we going back to this 2 weeks later thing? We don't really, all we saw was that, okay, now they're definitely going to the Forge this time. They say they're going to the Forge now, but now I think it all makes sense as to how it plays into everything.
Well, and again, is it because the kind of disjointed memory thing has been done so many times that it's hard to, or maybe it's just not as appealing as a storytelling medium, or it's because it kind of reminded me a bit of the first version of the first Netflix Arrested Development season, where it's kind of like one day, but it's kind of spattered all over the place, and you kind of follow different things, and is the question, did this whole concept land of Bernard's kind of broken memories? I like the explanation because it all made sense, right? It's the only way you can kind of keep the secret there. But I feel like the Hale reveal didn't have the same, and it was really cool. I thought it was a neat reveal, but it didn't have the same hit as the Bernard is Arnold reveal. We all kind of knew the William reveal, which I think finally took place in the season finale last year. But it didn't have quite the same impact. And is that because we kind of flipped back and forth so many times that maybe it took away some of the impact of that?
Well, I'll ask another question to sort of contest that. Has anything, in your opinion, risen to those twist heights from things like the Bernard reveal especially? Could it be because once that happened, now, especially those of us that really pick through this with, tweezers, that now we're sort of like, the fun things are often the most surprising, the ones that come out of nowhere. Are we now almost looking for those other shoes to drop? That now at like the slightest hint of a shoe dropping, we're immediately going to hop onto it. Is it just because we are so waiting for something to happen that when something does happen, we're like, oh, yep, it happened because I knew it was going to happen?
Maybe. Well, I think that's a good call out.
Well, I got to say, I didn't see that coming.
I didn't either.
No, I loved it.
I think what you're saying is that, but I think this show is you have to be so focused on the show that maybe that it's not that it's a great twist, but you're like, okay, I'm kind of exhausted at this point. I'm focusing so much on what's going on. I got to pay attention to this timeline. I got to pay attention. All right, what's he talking about? I know his words mean something. Everything's going on. That when they get to the twist, you're like going, okay, great. Okay, I can take a break now. Because I was the whole time I'm like going, all right, how's Bernard? He's got guns pointed at him everywhere. He's handcuffed. How is he going to get out of this? How is he going to get out of this without being shot? And then when I forget the guy's name, the head security guy, he gets shot.
Carl.
I go, well, Carl. I go, who shot him? And then you see it's Hale. You go, what the heck is going on? And then you see the twist. So it's at that point, it's like, okay, I'm just happy he's alive.
Well, I kind of bring, I think maybe I've mentioned before, maybe on another podcast, but it's the Steven Spielberg, when he made Jaws, he added the scene where the head drops out in the boat kind of early in the movie.
Right.
In the original cut, that scene wasn't there, and the big jump of the movie was the first time you see the shark when Brody is throwing chum into the water, and he says, "We need a bigger boat." That was the big jump. But when he added the head dropping scene, that became the big jump. And at that point, there was no other big jumps because you were already kind of conditioned to expect some type of thing to come out of somewhere. And is this a similar situation where I did not expect the Hale reveal? That was a shocker to me, but it just didn't have that same, like, holy crap, that's what that was, because it's already been done. I think
because then it's plausible. I mean, it just they've set it up where it's not it's a shock that happened, but it's okay. It's not out of the blue where it couldn't happen. You know what I'm trying to say? Where it's not one of those lazy writing things where you go, wait, what?
I think it also might have raised, surprise, some confusions, because I think now people are thinking it's not as clean cut as like, okay, William is the Man in Black, because now let's remember that we were essentially operating on like 3 different timelines over the course of this season. So now you need to think about, okay, there's one version of Charlotte Hale who is not Charlotte Hale, but you have to think about as to like who that is. And essentially it was whenever we saw, post Bernard being washed up on the beach, essentially every time she was with Strand and those people, when she was interrogating Bernard, when they found out that he was a host, that was Dolores as Hale. And when you think about that, I don't know, I see what you guys are saying in terms of like maybe it did not deliver an expected result, maybe because we've just jumped around so much that it really does confuse you as to like, okay, when was Hale herself and when was she not herself? But I think that the couple scenes that I remember from that timeline are so interesting now if you're going in from that perspective. Like, Hale outing Bernard as a host, but still interrogating him. To go back to, this initial point that you made, I think we were all focusing so much going in on season 2 about like Dolores versus Maeve. Here are the two hosts who are self-actualized. How will they face off against each other when the show is clearly much more about Dolores versus Bernard?
Yeah.
And that relationship is so inherently complicated. It's pretty fascinating. I think we'll definitely talk about the longer term ramifications about what they do with this whole the Sublime thing and quote unquote killing off these characters. Is it actually going to happen? But sending these two characters off on their own is really interesting because they admit to their complicated relationship. They, Arnold creates Dolores, but Dolores helps create Bernard. So there's this weird cyclical nature to it. They even admit to each other, at least Dolores admits to Bernard, like, hey, we're not going to be on the same page, but we need each other in order to survive in this real world. So that's probably the biggest X factor and most interesting thing that's really pulling me through to season 3 personally. So I liked how, even though it was a little repetitious, how we kept going back to scenes between the two of them. It really nailed home this relationship, considering that these two have been pretty much separated. You had Bernard meeting Dolores at Forlorn Hope in like episode 3, but other than that, the two of them really haven't interacted. So I'm glad they at least took this opportunity to really, especially if this is the main relationship they're pursuing from now on, they decided to hammer it home now.
Yeah, especially that closing scene where she said, we're not going to be allies, we're not going to be friends, but we need each other if we're going to survive, or if our species is going to survive, and we're probably going to die, but maybe we can endure. And it definitely set up at the two of them and whatever their conflicting journey is, where she is maybe more black and white totalitarian, and he's more of the softer human side. being kind of a replicant of a human, even though he's not an actual human. But he's kind of like I don't want to say half breed, but he's part Arnold, but he's also part something new. I think it's interesting. I think it definitely has been set up as the main kind of conflict or drive of season 3, and maybe the rest of the show. Absolutely.
And I liked this idea of change. I know that, like, if you drank every time the word choice was said in this episode, like, there would be you wouldn't be able to understand even, like, the most straightforward lines by the end of the hour and a half. But I like this idea that, again, it leads to this discovery that they make in the Forge that, the hosts are actually the more complicated individuals compared to the humans, because once they're self-actualized, they are able to change themselves, whereas humans sort of operate between, I think, what does Logan Forge say, like just vacillates between love and pride or something like that, so they're much more predictable in that regard. So the change that Dolores makes as well over the course of this episode, it's a really interesting, like, come to Jesus moment for her, because we've sort of been talking about this in the entire season about how, she, ironically, while she's saying, we need to get rid of anything that emotes, she's letting her emotions get in the way of her own judgment, and as a result, she's not making the best decisions. So it's interesting to see her change her own philosophy by the end when she decides to, we might be getting way ahead of ourselves, but to launch that sublime, universe out into these unknown coordinates, essentially to say, like, all right, this thing that I have been opposing the entire time, the thing that I was about to destroy before Bernard shot me in the head, I've had a change of heart. I realized that I was wrong. Now it's time to send things away. I don't know how that's going to incorporate, if at all, into her new plans now that she's out in the real world, but for people that were expressing frustration with the Dolores storyline, I wonder if that helps ease the pain a little bit, knowing that she finally has the realization that we did several weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that I enjoyed, that there was growth there, and understanding on her part. That she still is, attached to her ideals, but there's growth there for her as well, which to me rounded out her character journey this season, where I wasn't a big fan at certain points, but I'm in a much more satisfied place with her journey by the end of this.
So we're okay with Dolores now.
I am. I mean, you guys can feel your own ways.
Now, anyone have a problem with, because she was laying next to Teddy there? I mean, laying in his puddle of blood, and she didn't have a lot of blood on her face and hair when she got up.
She had one big spot on her neck or her face because she laid right where he shot himself in the head.
Yeah, I know, but there should have been more.
You wanted more blood, Jack, is what you're saying.
I'm just saying, if you're laying in a puddle of blood, that you're going to come up with a puddle of blood all over your hair and stuff.
And maybe it also brought some emotional weight to it as well, which I know we said that season 2 was a little bit lacking in, when she talks about launching the Sublime away, and I think she says something like, I left some good. We left some good people there, and sent some bad. Or no, we left some bad there, and we sent some good away. And it cuts to Teddy being in the Sublime. So we don't know what this means for James Marsden, if this is a wrap on him. But you'd have to imagine that, between that scene that Jack mentioned, the bloodless cuddling session, and then, her finally deciding to give him the send-off that he deserves, his own little slice of heaven. And it does add up a tinge of emotion, at least, to what Dolores was doing, a bit of heart to what she's been doing this season.
It did show that she did actually care for Teddy.
Of course. I think,
she truly did care for him. So at least that was nice to see.
Or his suicide maybe kind of made the point for her.
Yeah.
If
all right, she was John Locke. I was wrong.
Well, that's right. It's the John Locke, his death, his Jeremy Bentham, was the thing that finally got Jack to kind of change his perspective, as the man of science versus man of faith.
They go the whole way
shifted.
With him, Locke killing Boone and making all those different mistakes. So
no, I'm saying, but it may be similar in that Teddy's sacrifice is what kind of rounded out her journey and made her a bit more balanced than Kill 'Em All.
So I want to talk about Ford for a second.
Yes, I did want to talk about is the final Ford. It's if we're having a Ford, is he gone a count? Ford count?
I was gonna say that, like, if anything, I could see them bringing back, because especially now they set up this device of he doesn't need to literally now exist within the system. He's pretty much been purged from the system now, but he sort of exists as, like, almost like a Force ghost to Bernard, where, like, he's not really there, but he exists in his mind the entire time. But if this is the final scene with Ford, as much as I may have, maligned how much this season was all about Ford's invisible hand, and especially all, like, the whimsical Ford speeches we got the past couple of episodes, they were very light on this. But I thought that this scene with the two of them down by the beach before Bernard decides to scramble his memories, and this is where we find him washed up on the beach, where he comes to the realization of, okay, I'm gonna have to basically erase my memory of interacting with you. I thought it was really beautiful. Maybe it was just the cinematography, but Ford's speech here, I've always loved this place. Every city, every monument, man's greatest achievements have all been chased by it. That impossible line where the waves conspire, where they return, the place maybe you and I will meet again. I'm assuming he's referring to the horizon.
Yep.
And the interesting thing about the horizon is, it's always a goal, but it's something that you can never reach. So maybe he's alluding to the fact of, like, maybe if and when Bernard dies and he's not brought back for the zillionth time, and he'll finally meet Ford there. But I thought, if we're talking about a way to finally bid farewell to a character that was loomed so large, even posthumously, I thought it was a really simple but truly Ford way to do it, of him, saying goodbye by, making a poetic reference to a general idea.
You might have thought it was great and beautiful, but I'm thinking, great, another monologue by Ford.
No, I thought it was beautiful. I did want to ask you that, Mike, because I know you were getting frustrated a little bit because it was retreading a bit. But I thought it was a really a beautiful kind of close to that story. And I don't at this point with the show, I'm not going to say this is the last time we're going to see Ford, or that's the conclusion of Ford's story. But I thought it was a nice conclusion to this.
I think if Anthony Hopkins wants to do it, we will see him again.
Yeah,
agreed.
I think it comes down. I think it comes down to his decision. I think he has that kind of power. If he wants to do it, they'll say, "Hey, do you want to do something?" Well, if he wants to do something, he'll be in it.
I mean, he's an amazing actor. Anything he does, even if it's a bad movie or whatever, he's done some bad movies. But
I was saying he's earned that. I think he's earned that right to say, and they have left it open where he can come back. So, but I was going to ask, that scene at the beach, is that the same part? Is that the same beach they use in every movie, every TV show? That little cove type thing.
They were filming out in Utah, I think. Which, I mean, if we're talking about cinematography this episode, good God, like, between the canyons and these huge wide shots, it was incredible. But I don't know, don't they film all the shows in, like, Vancouver or Toronto? Should we add this beach in Utah as, like, the third common location?
Well, I mean, it could be that, or they might have shot it in LA or Malibu, there's a spot, or whatever.
There is one beach scene that's in almost, if there's a beach scene in a TV show or movie, it's that location.
What's that? It's the same beach that was used for
Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes, and
that's what that was my first thought. I go, oh, they're at that same beach, but maybe I was wrong. But
even there was two separate beaches in Planet of the Apes. It was the same beach. They just matted the spoiler alert, Statue of Liberty.
Mike was just saying the cinematography and just the landscape is just amazing. Like I said, when they were going through the rafts through the canyon there, it was just. I just said I would like to be there.
I've only been to Utah a few times, and I'm not an expert. But are those where the forges? Was that bears' ears? Like, they looked like ears that were sticking out of the ground. So, but I have no idea. I guess I could just Google it. But the whole time, I was like, is that bears' ears? The whole.
And I will say that yes, we did not have many Ford diatribes this episode, but we got a lot of Dolores diatribes in exchange. There were basically anytime Dolores said something important, it was in this big speech, which, again, makes sense. We talked about the sort of completion of her arc going to the third season. But, I mean, for all the times that, like, they've maybe just put Dolores in the last episode, for instance, but she was in, like, 2 scenes. This episode, extremely heavy on her and Bernard making these big pontificating speeches.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the next section I have here is Dolores and her new look. She is reunited with William, but gets the best of him by putting the used Teddy bullet in his gun, blowing off his hand, which is also a bit of a Teddy vengeance to William. I thought that was kind of neat. She seeks mankind's undoing. She is unloaded into the forge where Logan shows her the library of 4 million souls, learns what she needs to do to overthrow mankind, maybe? It seemed like she didn't read a lot of books, but maybe enough, including Carl Strand's.
Yeah, she said, like, I haven't read them all, but I got the gist of it. I skimmed it.
And
Evelyn Wood School of Speed Reading.
Yeah, and we did already talk about it. She saved Teddy's consciousness to the Eden that Ford made for all of the hosts to go to.
A rookie mistake by William. If your enemy hands you a weapon, you got to check it to make sure that there's enough bullets in there, or there's not something in there that she's done to. I mean, why would you just take the gun and not check it?
Maybe he's still susceptible to her wiles. I do think it's interesting that, like, William is telling her, like, oh, we're not so different, you and I. She's like, no, we are. You're a monster. I may be bad, but you are. And I mean, it was did not necessarily need the graphic image of how the last episode ended, but I suppose that makes sense. But I mean, the William stuff. I mean, is this guy officially like the Mikhail of Westworld, considering that got shot 4 times, his hand got blown off, he cut his arm open, but he's still breathing, lying on that hospital tent at the end of it.
Well, it's the thing, like, isn't that like in the form? It's not like if you cut that, there's like a main artery there, you just bleed out. Like, he was digging in there like it was, fake arm. It's just
well, maybe he knows how to dig without hitting the main artery.
Maybe. But there, I think. I have William Man in Black Bill as the next section here, so we'll save that for that. But Dolores, in her conclusion to the character, thoughts here. Thoughts on the Hale reveal. I think I talked about that a little bit already. And I was worried at first with the Hale. I was like, oh, so is Evan Rachel Wood done now? But thankfully, it looks like she made a new body for herself. That's the Dolores we all know and love. But does also mean now that there's 2 Doloreses or Dolores-I?
No, I think that she was able to put someone else's consciousness into Charlotte, because this is one of the other like big mysteries coming out of this episode is when Dolores is on the boat, she opens her bag and we see like 5 brain balls. Yeah. So you'd have to assume that, and that's probably what all these actors are like. Hopefully, they're looking at their contracts, hoping that it might be one of them.
Is that a brain ball mine?
Yeah. So chances are one of those is probably going to be in Charlotte. We don't know who it is because, again, like, the Charlotte host didn't really talk at this point, but that's my conclusion right now.
Yeah, that's a good theory. That's a good hot take. It's a good hot take.
What did you
Not
guys
great,
think?
But good.
I guess we can get a little bit into more of the Forge stuff itself. We talked a bit about, I guess, Logan's part, but how did you think about, like, again, we've heard so much about the Forge, the Valley Beyond, it's a weapon, it's a repository, etc. How did you think about the way it was actually presented? I mean, it was like Inception meets, like, I don't know what, like
Matrix
Inside Out
meets...
with the way things were stored.
Yeah, I personally liked it because it all. If the whole purpose of what Logan was doing there was to make it contextualized so that, a conscious, a human or a host consciousness could understand and interpret it, like, I thought it worked. Like, if the sum of these souls in a book makes sense, like if you're referencing it, this Eden that they created, the doorway, everything, like, it all worked. Like, it all seemed to... it's all made up stuff, like none of it's real, but it all made sense to me. It didn't seem anything like crazy or far-fetched. And it was all satisfying. Like the whole, the Eden that was created there, I thought there was a lot of really moving moments and a lot of beauty to what that was that I thought worked. And even, it's sci-fi, so nothing like that could be, but the ring under the ground that then lifted up, like it all kind of worked for me. And again, unlike, I Lost was one of my favorite shows all the time, but like the explanation for the smoke monster didn't really like make sense. This all made sense. Like it all seemed like in this world, this works, and doesn't seem like really far fetched to me.
Yeah, especially watching this back the second time, the Forge scenes I really enjoyed, and maybe it's because it got back to some of these more existential questions that the show really started addressing in season 1. And I'm really like still trying to get my mouth around this idea that the Forge puts out that, humans are actually the much more simplistic ones than the hosts. And the fact that, hosts have choice. Humans think they have choice, but they're essentially not in control of their actions. And it's interesting in that, that sort of makes the people that are in the Forge like the true human host hybrids that they were trying to go for with James Delos out in the real world, where they think that they allude to it later with Ford and Bernard. They talk about this idea of the passenger, where you think you're driving, but actually you're the passenger the entire time. You have the little like Fisher Price steering wheel on your side of the car, and you think you're actually doing something. But it's such a fascinating idea, and how Logan says, again, going back to this idea of fidelity, and that the hosts are now, the system is now sort of turning the tables on humanity, saying that they want fidelity out of them, not just to decisions made in the park, but to the decisions they made in their lives. That's when I found the truth. And that sort of plays part and parcel to them sort of doing a this is your life with Delos, where we see, okay, this is his first day in the park, but it's only when they examine like his inner psyche and the decisions that he made outside of the park. I don't know how they were able to do that, but once they found out like essentially his love for his son, that's when they figured out exactly. Again, it didn't work outside in the real world, but I think they sort of discovered that, as much as we may try to monitor people and the decisions that they make inside the park, you can't really, build a person out of that. But still, you only need to take a few decisions because humans are deceptively simple to read.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Jack, any thoughts on what did you think about the Forge?
I just like the fact that both of you are referring to Logan as Logan. I did just like that. No, I thought it was well done. So it was 4 million sold. That was 4 million customers, right?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
So that would explain how they were able to keep this thing up.
I know that's
trips. Yeah, it could explain how they kept this place going. I mean, that's a lot of people.
But 4 million people over 30 years. I mean, it's not a lot. It's not
they're paying
numbers.
But they're probably paying big. They're probably paying big bucks. So they're probably paying like $200,000-$400,000 to go to this thing, right?
I did find it odd that Charlotte. It'll be interesting seeing her moving forward, because I think that Charlotte definitely became like over the top big bad villain, especially before her death in this episode. But her sort of trying to rationalize to Elsie that like, hey, people won't care if their data's mined, if it's used for a good purpose. Don't know if that's exactly the most sound logic.
Yeah. But Elsie should have let. She almost caused her own death. I mean, she doesn't know how to play the game. Am I right?
But that's interesting, though, because that's exactly what Logan Forge is getting to, is that Elsie's quote-unquote coding, the 10,247 lines, just has her inherently want to go for the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And because she is so inflexible and cannot change, unlike a host, that's what causes Charlotte to kill her and does not find her valuable. Yeah,
Charlotte Hale knows what she's going to do, right? Because there's no changing of that.
Right.
And for any spouse that has tried to change the other spouse, they know this as well. So they didn't need to spend however much Delos spent. They could have just asked, a couple about the other person.
People don't change. They change a little bit, but not. But like I said, Elsie was trying to basically blackmail her, and she didn't have a gun.
Blackmailer / like also then Charlotte tried to bribe her as well with like, hey, a lot of people are dead. That means automatic promotion for you.
That is an incentive, though. You do see all the people dead, so it's kind of like, well,
she wants to be a dentist,
but she's not. She's not lying. Yeah, but what pays more? You got to go to school to be a dentist, right?
Well, I mean, there is.
She gets to move up to vice president because of what's going on.
Is there an allusion here to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and what was the dentist?
Some sort of dark timeline where like Hermie the elf doesn't make it out.
I want to be a dentist.
No.
You gotta build block toys. No kid's ever gonna want.
Oh man. All right, so let's go to William, Man in Black Bill. I want to save the post credits, kind of the end of our recap here, but he rides with Dolores to the Forge, still questioning his reality. Finally meets Arnold and doesn't recognize him. Again, Bernard's there, so I bet he doesn't care about the smaller staff. Knocked out fairly early in the episode. until we saw him go down the elevator, which leads to the post-credit scene, not meeting Bernardo Dolores, which was a little like, that's weird. At the time, when we get the post-credit, then it makes sense. And he's picked up by QA in the current timeline. Ellipses still human. So, thoughts here on Man in Black's, Bill's, Williams, whatever you want to call him, story here. It was kind of short with a big post-credit scene.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta hand it to him. I guess the big episode was last episode, which was a bit surprising because, as you mentioned, he was a pretty pivotal character this season, only to sort of get taken out of commission after a couple scenes. But I mean, there's also been this running theme this season where somebody is like, torturing Man in Black, and they say like, "You just want to suffer. I won't give you that pleasure." Like, eventually, someone should give the man his pleasure. Between Emily and Dolores, like nobody wants
Aki too.
guy.
Aki was like, "You don't deserve to die" or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what shocked me about this, him not dying early, but him being taken out so early, was when he was shooting Dolores. I'm like going, hey, this episode just started. What are we doing here? I was kind of like, what's going on? Is he going to kill? I forgot that she put the little, the teddy bullet in there. I said, I can't believe he's going to kill her. But then when he gets his hand blown off, I go, all right, now he's out of the picture. So that did kind of shock me a little bit.
Well,
it might have shocked me more than the Hale thing, because I was like, I expected to see more of the two of them together.
Well, it's interesting because Dolores was really in her final monologue to Men in Black, but definitely not her final monologue of the episode. But she's telling him, oh, your species craves death. You need it. It's the only way you can renew, the only way you can inch forward. Your kind likes to pretend there's some kind of poetry in that, but really it's pathetic. Is sort of again, what Emily and what other people have been telling him, which is what you're doing right now, you're a pathetic person for having this darkness inside of you. And I feel like that has really triggered him to a point. Now, I guess the big question is, now that he's alive, and assuming that we continue with him in this timeline, again, not to talk too much about the post-credit scene, but where does he go from here?
Yeah.
Because he is certifiably insane.
Yeah.
But I have no idea how, he's the leading investor in these parks. How does he handle it from a business perspective? How does he handle it from a psychological perspective, considering that he killed his daughter? Is that going to be blood on his hands that he has to come back to?
But he's always acted different though in the real world.
Yeah, but how is he going to come back and what happened to my daughter? Are they going to pull the old Teresa and say, "Oh, my daughter fell down a canyon"? That's a pretty tough thing to sweep under the rug.
Now, if you're crazy, sometimes you can block it out.
Well, it's like what a sociopath can do that, right? They can compartmentalize.
Well, he can block it out. I'm saying from an investigation perspective, where the police officers outside, and maybe he'll play into season 3, because I'm assuming he'll be out in the real world where Dolores and Bernard are.
You think there's going to be an investigation? I mean, I think the corporation's so powerful that they'll control the investigation.
Well, they just say that a host killed her.
Yeah, that's what they'll say. She just died. She got killed by a host, or so. She died, like you said, maybe fell down. They'll come up with something to, bury the evidence or something like that.
Well, I do think it's interesting that this guy's right arm has been so, I don't know, infected between him ripping it up and then his hand getting blown off. That I don't know. I feel like if we talked about having a virus last time, are we starting to see the physical manifestation of that? What is is his arm just completely inoperable at this point? I'm just really intrigued to see what the Man in Black looks like after this. He's been haunted by the voice of Juliet. Will we add Emily's voice to this chorus now? And how will he sort of react to this? Will he be affected by what happened in the park this past time? Or to your point, Jack, is he going to try to go on business as usual?
I think he'll try. I think he'll up front he'll try to as business, but behind the scenes, I think you can't help but be affected by it. But I think there's just two. Like Jason, there's just two Williams. I mean, he's able to, be the William that's like the last episode where we saw where he's just his wife was drinking. And he's the happy-go-lucky William. He's the William that the hard note, but behind the scenes he's an evil. Like his wife said, "You're evil." She knew the real William, but nobody outside the park knows the real William.
Mm-hmm.
So he's able to hide it.
Right, but maybe if I'm going to this idea that I have no idea what the theme of season 3 is, but maybe if it's about this idea of like hiding identity, as I'm assuming that Bernard and Dolores are going to try to do as two hosts masquerading as humans in a human world, maybe the Man in Black is going to come more so to terms with that as well. Of maybe, we talked about this idea of the vanishing point, right? The reason why he killed his daughter is because he wasn't able to break reality from his fiction and thought that Ford had created her for him. Maybe now things are going to start eking into the real world for him, where he thinks that maybe this is part of another game that he has continually tested, and he'll fall apart because of that.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe. But again, I think, and we'll save more of that discussion for the post credits here, but it's definitely, even though it wasn't a lot in this episode, there's definitely more to come with his story, and it'll be interesting to see how that story plays out. I think there's a lot of different ways they could go with it if there's 3 seasons left or something like that. It'll be interesting to see how the postseason or post credits episode or scene, how it ties in the next season, or is it a greater one that's even kind of beyond just the next season and something to a greater extent throughout the rest of the series. But we'll have to wait and see. Next up, Aki and his Ghost Nation. His vision of the door becomes reality, and he's reunited with his love. He kind of had his own standalone episode a few weeks ago. How do we feel about kind of his conclusion in this one? I thought it was a really satisfying, and even though there wasn't a lot of his story in this episode, I don't think there needed to be. He kind of fulfilled his promise to Maeve, and then he also got reunited with his love. So I felt like that was a nice bow on the Aki story that they brought into this season.
He was even trying to go back and save Maeve.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
Well, I'm glad that, I was fearful that, like, when people started going through the door that he wasn't able to get through there, especially when he got shot beforehand.
Yeah.
And this idea of, I think Lisa Joy calls it the sublime, this Eden that got set up, was so interesting because it really does have these more spiritual connections. I mean, even though it does have this more sci-fi aspect in this crazy, but like probably the best CGI effect on the show thus far was that dimensional tear that they did, which was weird. Like, I don't know, it literally broke my reality thinking about like dimensional tears that exist within the show Westworld, just because that feels more like, that doesn't feel very Westworld, but besides the point, I think it was a really cool effect. And I think that, this idea that, okay, your soul leaves your body and ascends to a higher plane where you live in bliss without any form of torture, not that far from the belief that some sects hold towards what happens after you die. So I thought it was a really, if we're sort of talking about this idea of spirituality, especially from the Ghost Nation perspective, when Ghost Nation was sort of hyped up to be the ones who go around touting the beliefs and the divine truth, to have his suspicions be confirmed and to have him get this quote unquote happy ending. I really enjoyed it. Well,
humans couldn't see the door, right?
Yeah.
You had Sylvester and Felix going, what door? Really? What door are they effing talking about?
But that's such a fun reversal, because remember, one of the reasons why we found out Bernard was a host initially was when him and Teresa were downstairs in the cabin, and Teresa's like, "Oh, lyrically, look at this through this door," and he goes, "What door?" So I love the reversal of that this is something only the host can see and not the humans, not vice versa.
Yep, exactly. And I thought it was really beautiful. It was very poignant, and it kind of leaves, like, if their consciousnesses are there, and then they're kind of, it's kind of like, let's maybe the host that wouldn't be able to survive in the real world with Dolores, it kind of has, it's the plan B where they can live out in this, Eden, let Dolores do the dirty work, kill all the humans, and then maybe they bring them back into the real world. That's how I saw it anyway. That a lot of the hosts did die, but there's some souls that were saved in the sublime, this Eden, and they could be brought back maybe after the carnage of Dolores's purge of the real world is done.
Well, they're going to bring back some of the hosts anyway.
Yeah, we saw that as well with Maeve and Hector and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that we had at least one story end in like a quote-unquote happy ending. Not to say that we're watching this show for that, but because that story was so emotionally wrought, it was nice to tie a bow onto it. I thought Zahn McClarnon had a fantastic performance in that episode, so I sort of selfishly would love to see him back in other roles, but I can understand that they send him off here just because I feel like narratively speaking, he got his bliss. He was proven correct. That's basically all he needs right now. And especially if we're going to bring up the question as to like where the actual park of Westworld goes from here, I feel like Ghost Nation is not really necessary in all that.
Not for now. For me, with that, or at least how I saw it, it's like it's goodbye for now. And then, we'll resume with them later.
When the waves converge is when Aki will come back into our lives.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Then we have Maeve and her merry band of misfits. She sends Ronald to a fitting end, and we have contact with the actor that plays Ronald, and maybe a fun summer episode could be interviewing him, because I thought he had some fun scenes, especially his death scene in this episode.
It was.
We had a badass running of the bulls Maeve escape, which is something that was teased in the trailer that we finally got to see.
But why? But why? They kept saying, "Hold your position." Once those bulls started coming in, I'm sorry. I'm not holding my position.
Well, I think that did they say hold their position when the doors actually open? I thought it was the hold their position because they just heard a big ruckus going on. They
kept telling them to hold their position. I'm like going, I would move.
I'm pretty sure we've confirmed, Jack, that all three waves of QA people that have been sent in are like the Keystone Cops of Westworld at this point.
They have the aim of a stormtrooper. And the competence of the Keystone Cops, where they can have these semi or fully automatic machine guns, but Dolores and Man in Black, who's been shot 7,000 times, can take them out with a 6-shooter. Here again, the greatest of red shirts just getting knocked out pretty easily.
Yeah, they did get knocked out pretty. I'm like going, move.
Well, I mean, I'm to your point, Jay. I'm surprised that it took us this long to see it. I mean, besides the preview, they replaced, the slow motion moving buffalo in season 1 with the bull in season 2. So I thought we were going to get it early on, but it was a really interesting image to have that carnage happen, so late in the game. And I guess this symbol of Maeve's sort of resurgence back into power, considering that she walks among them. I'm assuming that when Ford gave her access to the mesh network again, that's how she sort of called her posse back to her. We still don't know what they've been doing the past couple days, but I guess when they got like the Maeve signal up in the sky, they decided that, okay, we're going to try to bust you out, even though she said like, no, I had this, like, it was so nice for you to show, but I basically had myself taken care of.
And what this show does really well, and we've said it 1,000 times, is they make the women characters BA. I mean, when she comes walking out in the bulls and she's kind of in the middle of them and the glass is flying out and she's just not, and she has that stare like, okay, you're going to die. I thought that was a pretty cool moment. It's even almost like when William was shooting Dolores. Mm-hmm. She had that Clint Eastwood kind of thing where it's just, I'm not back and I just have that squint and I'm looking down, I'm just going to stare you down. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was a really good scene where the glass was flying and she's walking out. Good CGI.
I think that's a great just overall theme of season 2. Right, I feel like season 1, you come from an inherently Western times were inherently a misogynist time where right. Women could either be the Dolores or the Maeve. You could either be like the Mary Magdalene or the Virgin Mary, right. And so it's cool to see the roles reverse. I mean, we saw it even in one of the last scenes where now we have Dolores interviewing a naked Bernard sitting on the chair, and considering how many countless scenes, especially in season 1. Features, naked female hosts being questioned. Yeah. See the tables turn just a bit, I think is a very small but effective symbol about just the general gender power dynamics that exist in Westworld and how that itself has been upended in addition to everything else with the status quo.
Yep.
Agreed.
Exactly. She gets to her daughter, but is thwarted by Clementine 4.0. Is that 4.0 for Clementine? Maeve stops the chaos long enough for Aki to get her to Eden, but she is killed along with all of her merry men.
Now she couldn't control and stop.
That's what I was like. I wanted a better showdown between her and Clementine here.
But not only that, but obviously Clementine was controlling the host to attack each other. She couldn't tell the hosts not to attack each other. I mean, she was able to stop them.
Mm-hmm. It was weird because, she was able to stop them. I wonder if it was because after Clementine died, maybe they canceled each other out from a power perspective. And then when Clem finally died, she was able to stop them. It did seem like, this was a really fantastic emotional moment. I know that Colleen was like really emotionally overwhelmed by this, in particular with Maeve saying goodbye to her daughter. But when you question the logistics, you're like, yeah, for dramatic effect, you could have done this probably any other time, and who knows, maybe you would have been able to get away. But I mean, I cannot talk enough about just the emotional effectiveness of this scene, about her, Maeve, being on this journey for an entire season to find her daughter, and for her to finally realize that the thing she needs to do is let her go and maintain, find her own sublime, and that makes Maeve die a true blissful death, is just, it's very poetic. And considering that, again, she's sort of been separate from everything that's been going on, I think if we just judge that arc on its own, I feel like it's very strong considering how things ended. Though we're assuming, because Tandy Newton is amazing, that she's one of those brain balls in the bag, right?
Yeah, she's Felix and Sylvester right there.
Well, it's either brain ball or, again, we saw her body and the rest of her crew, and then they showed Sylvester and Felix there. I saw it as they were going to bring her back.
Oh yeah,
as opposed to maybe Maeve bringing her back.
Yeah, I mean, if they have a choice, if they have between her and Armistice and Hector, I think they're going to be looking towards like, hey, let me get the lady who can control minds. And again, who knows what's going to happen with her now that she's in Westworld? Maybe she still has her powers, but like, what does Westworld look like with, after this big purge happened? Does the park open back up? Is it essentially abandoned, as the post-credit scene may make us believe? I feel like that's an interesting thing.
So it's a ghost town now.
Yeah, and it might become its own ghost town. We might see several tumbleweeds, host-controlled tumbleweeds falling around. But yeah, I think that, it was nice to see, amidst all of the reveals and big things moving the plot forward, that we do have this genuine emotional scene of Maeve deciding that, okay, this is the thing that I need to do. My daughter must go on without me. And then her daughter, I had my reception to it was that she had her own sort of like Lost series finale moment where like she realized that it was Maeve because she had said something similar to her from a previous reverie. But maybe that was just for like cinema effectiveness that they just re-showed that scene. I'm not sure.
I want to say it's the latter. I think it definitely is, her kind of connecting to that as well, because she's remembering
I think
all
so.
of her past moments. So I think it adds more emotional weight.
I agree.
I'm gonna think
Concur.
It's that way. Let's talk about it. Hashtag Lee-demption.
It happened.
Are we going to confirm? Are we going to say Lee-demption happened in this episode?
Is that a cha-ching for Jack? Because I've been saying this the whole time.
We've all been saying it.
Well,
that one.
I think I've been pushing for it, but that's okay. All right, it's a team win.
But goes down in a blaze of glory to save Maeve and crew in a funny but also poignant kind of way. He's using his line that he wrote for Hector.
Can I offer some opinion here? Because they were on horses, right?
Yeah.
And horses can pretty much go anywhere.
Uh-huh.
The dune buggies can only stay on the road for the most part. Why didn't they just go off the road and? Like when flatlands,
they didn't really have any mountains to go up to yet. Maybe.
Well, no, when they were pulled over the side, when Lee made his great, I'll stall them so you guys can get away. They went up. I didn't understand why they just didn't try to do that first, but I know this for dramatic effect. This was a great scene for Lee.
But did he have to die? I think that's the question. I was like, did he have to die? Mike, you finally got his death scene. Was it everything you ever dreamed of in season 1, or are you sad to see him go?
I mean, on paper, if you told me a season ago that Lee's going to die quoting himself, I would say, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. But now seeing the way that it came out, I'm like, oh, I guess that makes sense as well. Yeah, I guess Lee is the exception to this claim that Logan makes that humans can't change, right? Because his character has seemed to do a complete 180, whereas he was so capricious last season and didn't give a lick about anything that was going on. Maybe it's because I don't know if I would say loved Maeve, but he at least formed a connection. You think he did?
I think he did. I think he was in love with Maeve, and I think Maeve loved him back.
There's a love there. I don't know if it was like a amorous,
he
love. But I think there's definitely a love there.
He definitely loved her, and I think that's why he did it, and that's why he sacrificed himself. He loved her, and he wanted her to get her ultimate goal was to save her daughter, and he believed it.
He had that conversation with her last week. Like, you should be with your daughter I'm so sorry. Cedric so could finally prove himself.
I think the reason he changed is he fell in love with her, and he probably didn't. He probably could have been that kind of person his whole life, but just when he got to the park, he got jaded and all the other stuff that goes on. Happened to a lot of people at the park. Maybe he didn't change. Maybe that's just who he was deep down. He was a nice guy for the most part.
I take it as this. I'm going to not go so much soap opera like you're going with it, Jack. I'm going to say that it kind of happened over the course of the season where he talked about this breakup that he had that led him to kind of develop Hector, that you only love this person, and through this I think he realized to kind of open up his heart again, a la the Grinch, and his heart grew 3 sizes. And I don't necessarily thought it was just out of pure love for Maeve. I think he just maybe opened up in something that he shut down in himself after this bad breakup that he had.
Well, I think that's what. But I think his love for Maeve is what brought him back. I think we're arguing about the same thing here. I think that's what happened. He had a bad, terrible breakup. He went to the Westworld.
I don't think he loves her like he wanted to be with her.
I think he wanted to be with her.
Yeah, then why die?
I mean, I might offer a third opinion on this. That I wonder if Lee was sort of realizing the follies in his cowardice, where how many times in this season has he run away and then gotten in trouble for it. It even happens this episode where he runs away from the group. He tries to save Maeve. He tries to do the quote unquote brave thing when it turns out to be all for naught. And then when Hector finds him, he's you turned her in. So maybe Lee just sort of realized that, it's a bit of a suicidal thought, but he thinks every time, I think I'm doing the noble thing, I end up just getting in trouble or screwing things up more. Now is the time for me to finally face the music and do the most noble thing of all. And what I think is really cool about this speech is that if we're under the impression, as was alluded to before, that Hector was a character that was constructed by Lee to sort of project as the guy that he assumed his ex wanted him to be, to have him go out sort of personifying Hector, to have him essentially playing the role of the man he once thought he was supposed to be, I think is a really cool way to end this character's journey.
But I forget who said, but did he have to die? He didn't have to die, because when he gets shot, he goes behind the tree. Now, what's going to stall the
stay behind the tree.
Stay behind the tree, because they keep saying they don't want to kill him.
Yeah.
And he could go on for another 10 minutes, and then finally they say, "Okay, I surrender." Yeah. And then they got to take him and bring him in, and by then, but. I guess it's more from a dramatic standpoint. It was more dramatic that but he didn't have to die.
Yep, agreed. But it's. I think
it's what Mike wanted, so they killed him off.
Yes, thank you. They definitely listened to this podcast, Jack. They listened to me. This was an interesting. I would never have guessed if you picked one tertiary character to get a full character rebuff and redemption over the course of 10 episodes, that it would be Lee freaking Sizemore. But I guess it was an interesting way to sort of redo a character, essentially. I wouldn't even say add things onto it. I really do feel like they completely rewrote the character. Whereas before he was just such a callous, non-caring person that now by putting him in danger, they made him care a lot more. And as a result, I wish this was the Lee that we saw in season 1. Because I think this is a genuinely interesting, the allies
genuine
of the host.
Lee.
Yeah, genuine Lee. 1776 is coming up, July 4th. But I feel this idea of the allies of the host between him and Elsie both dying here is also a sort of interesting symbolism too. That I think Ford calls Bernard the last of your kind at one point, and yeah, it shows that even those who consort and try to aid the hosts on their own end up dying as a result.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Except for Felix and Sylvester, who were just sort of there.
They're survivors. They're like cockroaches.
Well, exactly. They'll after Dolores's purge, they'll maybe be the only 2 humans left. Let's go to Stubbs and Elsie here. Speaking of Elsie, Stubbs kind of lets Halores go, knowingly lets her go, it seems like. And I guess he lives to see another day. So Ashley Stubbs hanging in there. That
was such an interesting, because Stubbs has sort of been in this emasculated position the entire time. where again, if we're talking about like the lack of a choice, where essentially everyone's telling him like, you're talking above your pay grade, man. And when he finally gets back in control, and it took like Strand dying for him to do so, he makes this decision here, and he goes into this entire speech about how what his core drive is, and how there are blurred lines, and who you're supposed to be loyal to. And that, to your point, Jay, that ominous line of, I'm responsible for every host ... inside the park, I think was a pretty big wink, right? That he was just able to suspect that Charlotte was a host at this point, but he decided to let it go.
Yeah.
I think he did. I think he knew.
Oh, but yeah, I think absolutely. But
so why? But why did he do it?
Yeah, there is this kind of like maybe Ford. This was something Ford kind of imparted in him, or something. Maybe it's still part of Ford's.
He said Ford hired him, so he
mentioned Ford a few times. It kind of.
Well, I also wonder if part of it is because Stubbs has seen firsthand just the unmitigated cruelty that all these QA people put onto the host. Maybe he spends so much time in the park that has like a veritable soft spot for them, that he says like, if a host is trying to get out, I'm going to help them do so. Again, speaking towards like these allies of hosts, those who emotionally resonate with them. Or maybe he's just relieved that, the Charlotte who is treating him so badly in that middle timeline is now officially dead.
Well, you see it this whole season when Abernathy's being, they put the spikes through. Do we have to do this? The torture and all the different stuff. And when he first sees Teddy, he's like, Teddy. He's happy to see Teddy. When Teddy comes in dressed as RoboCop or whatever we decide he was. Stubbs was happy to see him, so I think he does care about the host.
He's formed an emotional attachment, absolutely.
Right, exactly. And so he's, like he says, I'm here to protect the host, so go on your way.
Yeah. And I liked it, and I'd be curious to see how, if his storyline goes on. I would think it would.
Because that's a character that's kind of changed, too, because season one, we didn't really care. I mean, he was kind of a jerk, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's just like Elsie even painted him as just a jock with a gun.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting ready to kill these people. So
and now he has a heart.
Yeah.
So who changed more, Lee Sizemore or Stubbs?
I think Lee Sizemore definitively.
Yeah, that's not even.
He changed from a jock to a gun with like a jock who has a soft spot for one of the nerds. Lee Sizemore went from like the beat poet who doesn't care about society to like one of the most bleeding heart, literally, people who would like throw themselves onto a bullet for others. I think that's definitely more of a 180.
All right, we'll let it go this time.
Elsie is killed by hail. We thought she was going to die. I don't know if I thought it was going to happen that way, but it makes sense as far as her character goes.
She did. I mean, it's her own fault.
What?
Say it before. I mean, she just too. Like I think was it Mike that said or Jay said she just didn't change. I mean, she just didn't. I mean, there was no hope for her, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it is ironic that she goes into this big speech against Bernard saying, like, you're not in control. You can't tell the difference between decisions and programming. That when, again, if we go back to Logan Forge's big idea about humans, is that she's not really in control either, that this is just her base code is to act like this, and she can't really go against it. If she did, she might have been in Stubbs' position and survived a little bit longer, at least.
Yep.
Exactly. Elsie, you're awesome. Sorry to see you go.
Yeah, though I will say I wonder if Elsie wasn't killed, would that have still propelled Bernard enough to build, to put Dolores' consciousness in? Was Elsie's death essentially the creation of Hale Loris?
I think so.
I think so. I think that's what. Yeah, I think that's what did it.
Yeah, it was like
Elsie died. So Elsie died for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Her death wasn't in vain.
Okay.
7 on my list here. I guess actually 8. I didn't put a number there for Stubbs and Elsie. But finally, a conclusion to the Jim/Logan Talos story. That's been our count this season. But we see Jim's trip to Westworld and an early attempt to recreate him. Also, we see the last moment between him and Logan. Logan is a human form of the system controlling the Forge. System of a Logan finds that humans don't have some great complexity, but are a simple algorithm. And the books are set up like the player piano. Just an observation there. But so I can't do we even have the wherewithal to say is the last for them as stories go? But I feel like
Logan?
there's not much more else to say.
This is not the last time we see Logan. Just saying.
Mike, where do you stand?
Well, now I'm intrigued to find out where would you want to see him again? I mean, I guess the question is, like, unlike the Cradle, the Forge wasn't destroyed, right? It was just Bernard shut down this.
Well,
big
at least
data
now
part
it looks like it's
before it
been
could happen.
destroyed or removed or shut down in the post-credit scene. But yeah, as of now, in the present, it is still there.
He's like the other cockroaches. I mean, he just can't get rid of
But
him.
that's
I
not
mean,
Logan. The system Logan is just the system.
I know, but I think we
form.
will see some form of Logan again. I don't know how.
You said we're basically going to see Ben Barnes next.
Exactly, we'll see Ben Barnes again.
But that's not Logan.
But if his name is Logan, then it's
At
Logan.
least we had a memory of Logan the last time that Jim Delos saw his son alive.
I thought that was a great scene by the pool.
I thought it was great too.
And it was interesting comparing it to the next time on from last episode and how misleading that was, considering that I think we all thought it was going to be the same Logan, but it was essentially two different Logans between the desperate Logan saying, I've seen to the bottom, don't you want to know what happens? And the other Logan that's like, oh, here's all this information. It's interesting to sort of see the two against each other. I will say, and maybe I'm jinxing it as per usual, I think this is a wrap on Peter Mullen. I think this is a wrap on Papa Delos. We have literally seen his entire formative memories before us. I don't know if there's any other stuff we really need from him character-wise.
Yeah, we could see him again, but I agree with you. There's not much else that we need that I could think that we need. I mean, we even gotten to his visit to the park. I think even Dolores says, I don't care about this. I want to go to something else. I as a viewer, was I'm good. I'm good with the Jim Delos, Papa Delos story. Not that I didn't like it. I enjoyed it, and I thought it added a good element to this, but I don't need any more of it. At least that's what I think.
And then I thought it was interesting, I guess, comparing him with Logan, about how Logan was definitely, I think, he definitely shot around, but he was, I guess, a bit more lascivious when it comes to his activities in Westworld, whereas Jim Delos, he talked a bit with Clementine, who, ironically enough, quotes the Maeve story in The Forge, but then he does this super sadistic thing of, performing them all on a grid and then trying to kill anyone who runs away. For Jim Delos to go immediately to that the next time out is very strange.
Well, that, I guess...
That was
Bernard said that was them trying to replicate him. So that wasn't his visit to the park. That was one of the attempts to replicate him.
Yeah, he kept failing.
So at least that's how I saw it. That wasn't his actual trip, because that would be pretty effed up as a human being.
That's how I saw it also. That it was that was him trying to make him normal, whatever they're trying to do. Recreate, yes.
Bring him back to life.
Exactly.
And then let's close out here on the post-credit scene. We see what happened when Bill went down the elevator, but it wasn't in the same timeline. He goes down to an old and drained-out forge. Emily is there. And then...
I effing knew it.
Will says, I'm in the thing, aren't I? And then Emily says, no, the system is long gone. This isn't a simulation, William. This is your world, or what's left of it. He says he's at his park, but he doesn't know how long he has been there. He wanted to go there to prove that the system doesn't know who I am and that I have a choice. And asks, how many times have you tested me? The Emily says, it's been a long time, William, longer than we thought, kind of echoing, William's conversation with Jim Delos. And she's going to ask some questions to verify fidelity. And that closes out the post-credit scene. A lot of discussion here. There was even some clarification from Lisa Joy about that this was not in the same timeline. This is well after what's happened here. Luckily, this wasn't a purgatory scene, or it would have been really confusing. But no, this was a scene that was later. Obviously later because the forge was completely drained out. This is the William that we saw up until that point, even being carried away at the end by QA, was an actual living William, and this one that we see much later is some type of host replication of William. But thoughts here?
Well, it's good that got clarified, because I don't know about you guys, I was pissed the first time I saw it. It's just because I think, the William as a host theory, I just feel like, why do that? And I know I have talked about this incessantly over the past few weeks, last week especially, but I just felt like why would you want to do that when, again, if you're dealing with this idea of hosts versus humans, why make one of your most compelling human characters a host? So I'm glad that upon further reflection, it turns out not to be the case. But I mean, we can't technically call him a host, right? He's in this James Delos territory now of like a human host hybrid. Because we saw, in The Forge, we saw when Logan was sort of taking them through a very Delos HQ-like set of cubicles of people getting interviewed. I saw the Man in Black was one of them. So I guess they sort of put that consciousness into his body and are now trying to sort of replicate him. Is our assumption that what we saw him do in the course of season 2, this loop that ends with him killing his daughter, getting shot, getting his hand blown up, etc., that's the loop he keeps getting taken on? And that's when he keeps getting brought down here? Or am I making too broad of an assumption there?
That could be it.
That was actually what my crackpot theory was going to be, that he's stuck in a loop. I think I said a couple weeks ago or a week ago, maybe that's his punishment, that he's going to be put in this loop, and he has to, like Delos remembers, Delos memories are all intact, right? Well, Man in Black, everything he's done isn't, and he just has to keep reliving it. Yeah. And maybe that's what he was going. Maybe that was his game, was to destroy this, so he would never have to go through this loop where he was stuck in this.
Or he kills his daughter over and over.
Where he kills his daughter. That's what maybe he was. Maybe that was his game. His plan for the game was to destroy the. I mean, remember, he says he wants to burn the park down. But why would you want to burn the park down? So I don't have to keep living these bad memories of my wife dying, my this, that. Everything he's done bad over his life, he just keeps living over and over again.
Well, I will say he said in the scene that, he just wants to prove that he's not what the system says he is, which is this sociopath, crazy person. So that's his. It's at least what he says is the reason he went here, or why he was going here. That's the reason he wanted to prove that this system doesn't know who he is. This system actually can't figure this out. That I still have a choice. It's not as simple as this system is making it out to be.
But he knows what Jim Delos went through, right? Because he was part of it. So
and that's the really fun part of this as well. As again, we talked a lot about Ed Harris's facial reactions last week. Just the close-up shot of his face when he realizes that all the personal hell I put Delos through, I'm now going through.
Exactly.
It's like very much the end to like a Twilight Zone episode. Yes. The irony is so delicious here.
And that's what I got out of this closing. Because I was like Mike at first, like, oh, come on, he's not a host. And then I watched it again, and I read the explanation. I go, okay, this is what he is. He's reliving his, and I just think that's what he was trying to do. Is when he wants to burn the park down,
he wanted to avoid this, essentially.
Right, exactly.
Right?
He knew that he knew eventually that he was copied. He knows that he was copied. He did not want to be put through what he put Delos through, and that's why that's what his goal was, to burn. And Ford did not want him to burn the park
when
down.
He talked about how he truly wanted to die. He did. He wanted to die.
Right. He wanted to die. He wanted it to be over. And I think that's what they're showing us in this scene, that he didn't succeed. He's trapped in this. He's a bad guy. He did bad things, and he's forever going to relive these things over and over and over again. Yeah. That was my crackpot theory sticking to it, but that's all.
Now, what do we think the ramifications of this are? The fact that this is you talked about this before, Jay, that this is like a super flash forward where, the Forge seems completely desiccated. I think the Emily, who is a
sand
host
in there and stuff.
Yeah, and like the Emily, and you can never get sand out once you bring it in, but the Emily who is not human at this point, she is either a host or she's like a memory in there. But she said that like he's way too late. Do you think we ever come back here, at least next season, or do you think this is just like a point in the way distant future that we might get to like near the end of the series where we see like a destroyed Westworld?
That's how I kind of saw it, in that it is a ways away, especially like it being that decrepit and everything. Like maybe we get to that scene at the end of next season or something. I don't know, but we kind of got this flash forward in William's storyline. That it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, whether it is more of a X-Files closing where this is the hell he was going to try to avoid. Like, this was his comeuppance. This was his purgatory. This was whatever it was. And he doesn't get to die. He has to, like, his consciousness continue to kind of live on. And it's not even what he thinks is truly his consciousness. It's just what a computer thinks he is as a soul, which is, according to System of a Logan, is a really simple, primitive being.
That's why, like Aki didn't kill him, and they didn't want him to die. They wanted him to, remember this over and over again.
Yep. So, I guess he did get to, or at least all people that kept telling him, no, you don't get to die, or you don't get to do this, blah, 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 blah. He got.
No, you've caused a lot of pain and suffering. You're going to spend the rest of your life or eternity.
Well, yeah, and now it's going back to this thing that Delos was talking about with this whole imagery of, like, the devil, that we thought that the Man in Black was the devil personified, but it turns out that, like, he's the one that's getting tortured. And maybe just the idea of this thing that he created, this project, is actually the devil itself, and now he's the one trapped in hell.
Well, I think you said earlier, Mike, that the gate opening up was kind of like heaven. Well, now he's in hell.
Yeah.
So you have the two stories.
Yep. Whatever between each other.
Exactly.
But yeah, overall, I thought it explained things well as a finale. I think maybe to your point, Mike, that it seemed to feel like the full hour and a half is because it seemed to save a lot of the explaining for the very last episode. It saved a lot of the twists for the very last episode. So it spent a lot of time, answering and kind of tying all of the loose ends that it was putting throughout the entire season. I think it could be argued either way that that's the best way to do it or not. If I had any critique, I would say maybe some of these things would have been better parceled out throughout the season, or at episode 6, 7, 8 maybe, or that kind of penultimate kind of twist kind of thing. But I was very satisfied with the conclusions or how they wrapped up a lot of the things. And I was excited for the Dolores Bernard kind of closing scene, them outside of the park, and excited for the post credits in the William scene after getting the explanation from Lisa Joy that this is kind of a flash forward in the storyline for William past his death and in whatever kind of purgatory hell that his consciousness has been kind of put into. But yeah, satisfied overall though for a season 2 that had a lot of expectations to try and live up to.
Yeah, so I guess I'll ask the big question that I know it's really fresh, but do you prefer season 1 or season 2 overall at this point?
I think season 1 had a better pacing to the story. Like I get what they're trying to go for. I think even Lisa Joy said like the point of the season was like a noir where the guy's trying to figure out the murder or whatever it is, and you discover it along with him. And then you kind of get the big reveal at the end. And so I get if that's what they're trying to go for, but they kind of went out of their way to really cover the tracks and make it confusing, just to make it confusing, to not give us the answer. At least it gave us the answer in the end of this season instead of like making you wait 6 seasons for that or something like that. But yeah, I thought the at least the pacing and the structure of the story I thought landed better in season 1 than season 2 did. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think that season 2 produced 2, though, like fantastic episodes, specifically in Riddle of the Sphinx and in Kitsuya, which was the Aki episode, which again was just so. If you're talking about like one-off episodes of Westworld, that might be number 1. Yeah. It's just like a self-contained piece of storytelling because it's absolutely beautiful and speaks just towards the simple ideas behind the show. And I think simple is the key word here, where it's weird to say that season 1 is the simpler season because there's really nothing simple about this show. But I would say maybe season 1 was more streamlined, whereas like season 2, you have, like you said, all these multiple timelines, and you have Bernard sort of going between memories, so you don't know where you are. You have these larger ideas that are being put out that you don't really know will happen. You have Ford returning and then leaving. You have all these random new characters coming in. You have like Shogun World introduced for 2 episodes and then never being talked about again. So I mean, I always love getting to talk about this show with you guys, and I think the show is both beautifully shot and fantastically acted. Mm-hmm. I wonder if this season they bit off a bit more than they can chew. And again, it led to some fantastic episodes. I think what Riddle of the Sphinx and Kitsuya did was really answer bigger questions about the show's functions without necessarily making it too much of a puzzle box thing where, like you said before, Jay, maybe this was an hour and a half packed of reveals, but maybe if they parsed out some of these reveals to like, okay, we don't need yet another scene of Dolores walking towards the Valley Beyond and dealing with some group of people, you know? Maybe if they parsed some more stuff out there, it could have been paced a little bit more interestingly, but I still enjoyed it. But I would say season 1 over season 2, maybe season 3, now that they have had such a game changer of a location change, maybe they can now course correct. And in paring down the cast a bit now, they can say, okay, let's focus on a few key storylines and hopefully less timeline jumping.
Yes, agreed.
I would say both seasons are great. I mean, I mean, they are two different types of storytelling, but I'm going to go with season 2 just because they can. I thought going in, I knew what was going to happen. I mean, I thought, and I was wrong about almost everything that happened. I mean, I know they were trying. They did a great job of confusing us and all the timelines and all the different stuff they were doing. But I was shocked how the direction Dolores went, and just the whole, with Maeve and everything. I thought it was, and they had 2 of the best episodes of the series in the whole thing. So I'm going to go with season 2 just because they pulled it off. I mean, like I said, I've been saying this from day one. I didn't know how they were going to get a series out of this. Season 1 was excellent. Season 2, it just kept going. So can they do it in a 3rd season? I don't know. Mm-hmm. We'll see. I mean, I got like the whole time. And maybe the problem I had when I was watching this final episode was not just trying to figure out what was going on. My brain's going, okay, how's this going to continue? If this was the final episode of the series, I think I could have just sat back and enjoyed it more. But my mind's going, okay, how's this going to get? All right, the park is destroyed. All the hosts are dead. The hosts are in heaven. What's going on here? How's this going to continue? Then I go, all right, they're going to go, I kind of see that, but how's this going to work? Is this going to be successful? Am I going to find this interesting? Mm-hmm. And I guess we'll wait and see. But I think that might have been a problem for me on how long this episode seemed to be because I'm trying to watch it and also try and figure out how's it going to continue. Mm-hmm. Instead of just sitting back and enjoying it, going, all right, this is the finale, because this could have been the finale for me. This could have been the series finale, and I would have been fine. I'd been fine with it. Mm-hmm. But I'm watching this going, okay, how's this going to wrap up? How's this going to continue? Are we getting all new characters? What's going on here? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
I would agree because I think that they really tied up a lot of loose ends, with the exception of maybe a couple of questions between the 5 brain balls that are in the bag and, who Charlotte Hale is now, and also like what do Bernard and Dolores do. But other than that, I feel like they really did a good job of not only wrapping up a lot of stuff within the park, but also, again, making these big grand thesis statements about, what is humanity and how does it compare to this artificial intelligence, and how is artificial intelligence actually more advanced than the human condition. And especially, I feel like as the days go on, this is becoming a larger question in our modern world as technology becomes a more prevalent part of it. So again, I can't say enough about how I'm glad this episode got back to that, because that's something that definitely kept me buoyed along for this entire show, is not necessarily the mystery behind it, but I guess the larger heady ideals of like what makes somebody human. Are we in control of our actions? I think Bernard even vocalizes it this episode of, is this one long con essentially the idea of free will? So if they keep going down that road, I'm totally fine with it. What do you think? How many are we expecting? Like a big cast purge with only our alive characters and those 5 in the bag coming back, or do you think that a la Logan, we're gonna see like Sizemore come back in a flashback, Elsie appear as a memory?
Elsie not so much. I could see Lee in some fashion, maybe a Maeve's memory or something.
Yeah.
Because that's been a phrase used a few times. I think it was even kind of in the description for this episode. You live as long as the last person that remembers you.
Right.
So I think that could come back into play for sure in some way.
My question is how durable are those brain balls, because she had 5 of them together there.
They look pretty sturdy.
There's no padding in between. I guess they're not like eggs.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're. I imagine them as like those little balls, those stress balls where you kind of you move them in your hands. You have like 2
So they're squishy.
Rotate. No, like
No.
Oh, you're talking about to keep your sanities.
It was like they're kind of big marble kind of thing.
Like Mutiny, well, not Mutiny on the Bounty. What's that movie with Humphrey Bogart? Maybe it was Mutiny on the Bounty. I don't remember. Anyway.
but yeah, that's how that's made the feel that I kind of got.
All right, and because the clicking doesn't destroy what's inside the.
No, I think technology has advanced at this point that they are,
Okay. All right.
The only thing that breaks the technology at this point is if somebody punches the screen, which they have done a couple times. And again, if we're speaking towards Dolores and Bernard sort of mirroring each other, I don't want to go back to something we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, but Dolores using Bernard's words against him with the what that is real is which is irreplaceable as her own rationale for destroying Sublime. Then her punching the screen just like he punched the screen to destroy the Cradle, back in the day. I think is it's an interesting comparison between the two. So I think that we should focus more so, obviously, with Maeve. Sort of, we don't know how she plays into it, but I really think that they're really setting up Dolores versus / cooperating with Bernard, and I think that's the relationship to look forward to in season 3 and beyond.
Agreed. I agree.
And what, Maeve's going to rebuild the park?
I don't know. Or well, if they bring her outside of the park, we'll see how she works, because her core drive, for lack of a better term, was to save her daughter. She ended up saving her daughter, but ended up sort of losing her in the process. What does she do now?
Right. And we're just assuming they're going to bring her back.
I mean, yeah. I feel like it would be suicide for them to not bring back Tandy Newton, because she's absolutely incredible and and a fan favorite character as well. As long as there's meat on that narrative bone, I say keep chewing.
Yep. Agreed.
All
right, well, that's what we thought. It's time to get into what you all thought with some listener feedback. Here we go. Listener feedback. All right, it's listener feedback time. We've got some emails to jump into here. First up, our good friend, Not Ethan. Here we are at the end, my friends. Not Jack, and not Jack. I can't wait for the all Logan finale. Cha-ching. I'm writing to anticipation of episode 10. This season of Westworld has certainly felt different than season 1, but I've enjoyed it. Dolores is still fun to watch, even though I am not rooting for her. She's crazy. I find Maeve a little boring, personally. I don't understand how she magically returns all the time. Seems like she gets writer favoritism. I agree with y'all that Ford telling her she's his favorite felt a bit of a retcon. I have to say the character I have most sympathy for is definitely Bernard. What a performance all season by JW. His nuance and empathy has been stunning. I actually like the choices he makes because he seems the only self-realized character who actually understands he's a robot and not a human. I can't wait to see what Bernard does next. My favorite character to watch this season, though, has been Bill. Ed Harris was phenomenal. I definitely didn't see all those twists and turns coming. I do think y'all were a little too black and white last week, claiming Bill as this all-around terrible person and his wife was an angel and he ruined her life. Okay, sure. He was not the most available husband she feels cheated on, at least emotionally, but that doesn't qualify her to go ahead and become a drunkard, become an addict, and kill herself. I think she also has I think she also has to take responsibility for her choices and her actions, and I'm not in agreement with not Jack and that she's wholly a victim. Also, and let me be clear, I'm not signing Bill up for any father or husband of the year. He killed both of his... Okay, whatever. But I want to talk about that profile for a minute. It's supposed to reveal your true self. And Juliet watched the videos of him doing horrible things in the park, but let's be real, how many times when you're playing a video game have you done stupid things like driven off a cliff and committed suicide, ran over animals, shot an innocent civilian, etc.? We've all messed around and done dumb, silly things in video games for fun because there's no consequences. Does this convict us of being sadistic? Isn't Westworld the same thing? Is it a world where you can do whatever, no consequences? So shouldn't Bill be given a little slack for his profile reveal? I would think most people who go into a fantasy world would do things for fun they normally wouldn't do. Isn't that the point? And would we chastise everyone for these choices? I think maybe not. He's being a little defensive here. Maybe he is quickly realizing that maybe his profile fits Bill's.
Yeah, can't wait to see Not Ethan's GTA footage get released.
Anyway, here's my hanging chads. are the things I'm curious to learn more about. I want to see a lot more of the Middle Kingdom of the story, the days of William doing his Delos project and Ford doing his own project, how they came into conflict, why is Ford and William so angry with each other, what would make Ford so antagonistic against William to create this whole game/narrative for him, what exactly did Delos and William do to break their treaty and mess with Ford's stories. It seems like there's a lot of untapped story potential there to conquer, but I'll probably have to wait until 2024 to see it. Until then, your best friend of all time, not Ethan. So thoughts there.
I mean, I can understand where he's coming from, but I feel like William himself defeats the argument, because I feel like of all the character who is ascribing to this theory of Westworld shows you who you truly are, and you know, there might be a game, but you're acting purely out of your own base instincts, it's William. Yeah. You know? And he's the one who's also saying, like, I have this dark thing inside me. I have this virus. So, like, maybe not Ethan feels like he needs a pep talk, maybe, but I just feel like because I'm listening to the words that are coming out of William's mouth and believing them, because that's the closest thing we have to this point to psychoanalyzing him. Yeah. But I think he has a good point about the lost part of the timeline, where, like, what exactly has led to this schism between Ford and William, because I do agree that there's something there instead of just the, oh, you've been doing, you know, bad things in my park.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not only that, but you have, you know, like, sex robots are becoming a reality. And we talked about this in the Ramblecast. Is that cheating? And I think most people said yes. But also he's killing children. You know, he's killing women. He's raping women. He raped Dolores several times, right?
We assume that he did. They didn't show it, thankfully.
Okay, we're gonna assume that he did that. Yeah. I'm gonna say and I usually like not. I usually back not Ethan 100%. I'm gonna side on that you know, his wife did have a choice. She could have left, but she knew how evil he was, and this is before she knew he was evil before she saw the profile, right? Mm-hmm. The profiles would push her over the top. So when she's talking to him, she knows. He goes, I know the real Bill. Mm-hmm. That you're evil. So he's done things outside of the park probably that have made him an evil person too. So he's just pure evil. Yeah. It's just easier for him. It's just he does it in the park because that's who he is. Anyway.
No, I think that's fair, and that maybe it'll be not Jack, Jay, and Mike the next time he sends an email.
Good,
or I guess not Jay, not Mike. There you go.
Yeah, because I think that the two not Jacks are confusing. Purely by order, I'm assuming you're the first and I'm the second, but it's still tough to refer to them out of order.
Maybe not necessarily though. I mean, I maybe I'm really low on not Ethan's list, and he doesn't even want to acknowledge my existence. But who knows? Who knows?
He's not alone. To be fair.
I feel like I'm on. I feel for Emily so much just because I identify so much with her story in my personal life.
Don't go on Westworld with me.
All right, let's go to this next email here. Hey guys, just wanted to share my thoughts on the finale of the season overall. I'll preface this by saying my hands down favorite episode series. This episode was focusing on Akicheta. The acting performances and writing for the episode really blew me away. That said, looking back at the season, I'm really disappointed at the overall story this season. I'm not sure what happened between season 1 and 2, but I felt like season 2 was a big let's throw a bunch of random ideas in the wall and see what sticks. Seems like every type of sci-fi trope we've seen in movies was used here. Replicant/clone killer robots, apparently everybody. Matrix Reloaded-like programs talking to each other, Logan Light. Tron-like VR world, Crater Forge. Robots with superpowers, Maeve. People are dead, missing, but are not really dead and show up later conveniently, Elsie, Ford, Emily. The acting season has been top rate, but the writing has been too convenient and downright lazy. I love shows about mystery and intrigue, but I think Westworld is doing it just to do it with no proper payoff. Whether it's the game between Ford and William that went nowhere, or the big mystery about who's in control until Bernard, or unit until did Bernard have in his pocket the whole time, that also had no proper outcome. It doesn't even make sense why everyone was looking for Abernathy's control unit in the first place. I thought it was so they could gain access to the Forge, but Logan Light reveals that Bernard conveniently has visited the Forge several times to build the host Oasis. How did Bernard get in without Abernathy's control unit? I'm not the type of person that nitpicks or looks for plot holes, but they're all over the place in this show. I've seen the showrunner Jonathan Nolan do the exact same thing in his previous show, Person of Interest. That was a great show that had a great premise, but after season 1, the writing just went all over the place. And with Westworld Ex Machina movie-like ending, I'm not really interested in seeing what other movies he tries to rip off in season 3. So I say I think the show's a little less lost and more like Heroes. I'm out, John from Jersey. Wow.
That's fair enough.
I think that what John from Jersey is expressing is, I do think there is some of those similar opinions going on with people after season 2 where they might have felt like too little too late for these reveals. He made some interesting points about maybe some plot holes. Like we did skip over this whole idea that Logan said, "Oh yeah, Bernard, you've been back plenty of times. You were the one who built this, the Sublime, this Oasis thing." When, they were going for this MacGuffin of Abernathy's control unit because, I guess in theory, he had all of the guest data on it, but it looked like all the guest data was in the Forge anyway. So I guess how was he able to get in without using Abernathy's control unit as the key? Because that's what Dolores used to get in there. That's sort of one bigger question. So, I mean, I disagree with the writing being overall too convenient and downright lazy, because I think there really were some fantastic moments that brought to light these larger ideas, which is what I love about the show. But I do see his points about some of the tropiness that it falls into. And I'm sorry to say that to see that he's jumped off. Maybe his mind will change in a couple of years from now when season 3 comes back.
Exactly.
When there's nothing else on 2 years from now, right?
Yeah, maybe second viewing it'll land a little better. This definitely not Heroes for me. I think Heroes was garbage. Season 2. This is not that for me. But I think those are fair criticisms of season 2.
Well, Pete mentioned Person of Interest. I think I made it through 3 seasons where I really enjoyed the show, and then it just got terrible.
Yeah.
So we'll see, I guess, what happens.
Quick point discussion theorizing following season 2 finale, though it felt like a series finale to me. At the end, we see Dolores Abernathy / Charlotte Hale, a.k.a. Shaloris Abernathy, leaving with what I think were 6 Pearls cores getting smuggled out of the park. Who do we think or could confirm those to be? My quick guesses: 1, Teddy; 2, Papa Abernathy; 3, Bernard; 4, William; 5, Clementine; 6, Charlotte. And something I'm sure will come up. The human algorithm code looks a lot like a player piano sheet music, which brings 4 season 1 finale speech snippet full circle. Mozart, Beethoven, and Chopin never died. They simply became music. Otherwise, wow in the finale. Definitely need to watch at least 1 or 2 more times. Thanks for the great season, Jay, Jack, Mike, and Colleen.
Nice.
All right. Do we need Clementine?
No, I mean, I guess was it 6 or was it 5? I think it was 5. But I guess if we could
maybe it was 6. I don't know.
But I guess if we could try our best to come up with who we think might be in those pearls. We know that Bernard is one of them because she killed Bernard but was able to bring him back.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Abernathy's a good guess because I think that A, Dolores would want to see her father again, and B, he has so much other information in him at this point that he might prove to be useful. I'm trying to think about other ones.
You got to bring back Teddy.
You think
he's in the,
but there's this emotional thing where why would we see this thing of her putting him in the Sublime? I would love to see James Marsden back, but wouldn't that just I keep going back to this thing of I don't want to revert emotional stakes and big character moments. I feel like that would revert a big one if she's like, I'll send him away on this parallel universe, but it's totally fine because I have a copy in my pocket the entire time.
Yep. I think he's off in that Eden. I think he'd be brought back out of that, but at some point in the future. But I don't think he would be one of the pearls.
I would think Maeve's definitely one. Yeah, I think.
See, I think Maeve is still on that shore.
Yeah,
I think Felix and Sylvester are going to bring her back. That's what I think.
Because she does say salvage the ones you can,
and they look at her.
So maybe they also salvage Teddy, and then Maeve uses Teddy like Dolores did, and then he ends up killing himself again.
It's a loop. It all repeats. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they made an interesting point about Charlotte. That could it be Charlotte in Charlotte's body? But she's has this weird affectation to her. It would be weird to bring Charlotte back, just because again, I do like seeing this new version of Charlotte Hale. all great work to Tessa Thompson, but I will again say that, especially in that last episode, in the Elsie killing scene especially, you see like Charlotte Hale at like her most over-the-top, maniacal, fingers twirling, villainess, smoking a cigarette, as ironically enough, the person who says, "Be careful what you wish for," ends up shooting and killing her. So I don't know if we need that. I'm trying to think about like if there's really anyone else that A, would not have already been revived on the shore, and B, would be an interesting enough character to bring back in a different form next season.
Or guess what pearls would she have easy access to, Like,
well, I mean, with access to the forge, I feel like she could get any of them,
True. That's true.
That's true. I don't know. Guess we'll find out. Maybe it's one we haven't even seen. Who's that guy Ford used to drink with in season 1?
Yeah, the guy that drinks to the woman in the white boots.
Yeah.
Well, what if? Here's one. What if this would be crazy? What if? Because I know I was questioning the big police investigation that might happen due to Emily's murder. But what if she takes an Emily brain ball back, puts it in her head, and now none the wiser. Emily's still alive, but actually she's now secretly a host.
Yeah, There you go.
That would be a trip. That would definitely be a trip.
Would mess with William, too.
And that's
Daddy.
the Emily that we saw. Are you saying that's the Emily that we saw in the future?
That could be it as well. Yeah, like she made her way. She made her way back into the park and is now. She's like the Angela. Oh, maybe Angela as another. Maybe Tallulah Riley will be back for season 3 because she was a loyal Dolores ally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll see, but it is that. All I think is one of the big questions going into season 3 is like, there's the Oceanic Six. Who are the other 4 members? It's that type of thing of like, okay, we know that a couple of characters are back, but who are the other ones? Which characters are we going to see in season 3? And that'll also become an underlying question too, as to like, is this person really this person, or are they this person's body with this person's brain ball in their head?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll bring back a creepy young Ford. Kid Ford.
Well, he'll be like 20 by the time they do that. Like,
they'll have to Bobby Draper him and cast
that is true, right?
We'll have to wait and see. But I think that'll be a fun speculation game to play for the next 3 years as we wait for season 3.
That's our own loop. Is we're just sitting in a room, like talking 11,000 times about who are in these brain balls.
Who are they gonna be? That's a sad thing. If it was coming back in the fall, you could actually do it over the summer. You could have like a contest and stuff like that. But now that's not coming back till 2020, we think.
At the earliest, because again, I'm assuming that 2019 HBO is devoting fully to the final season of Game of Thrones.
Yep. I mean, it could be the fall 2018.
But I feel like production is in no rush. I feel like now that they've been allotted this time that it wasn't back in 2017, I feel like now they can say, all right, guys, we don't have a time crunch. Let's focus on putting out the best material that we can. So they might. It's a bit more of like a British show, for example, where the series, and by series I mean seasons, are more intermittent. Think of something like Sherlock, for example, than our traditional American model of, okay, once a year you have a season.
Well, you know why they're taking so much time off? They go, look, we lost John from Jersey. We got to get him back. Got to fly him out. Here, what do you want us to do?
We're going to do all-star treatment, yeah. All right, let's go to this last email for listener feedback. It's from none other than Ethan. Hello, it's over. So much to talk about, but I would like to keep it to a short 5.5 pages. First, let me say how bummed I am that there isn't an old Logan. I was happy to see more of young Logan, at least in the simulated sense. I take real issue this season with the scenes shown in trailers for the show. At least 3 major shots were in them, and the moments would have been mind-blowing if we didn't see them first. Maeve's Stampede, 1. 2, reveal of the mini Bernards. But I guess that was Dolores' Hale anyway. And 3, trailer for last week, there was a shot of Hale coming upon the host Hale. Oh, well, F me for camera. Was that in there? I don't remember that.
But I don't remember any of it, but that's just me because I'm old.
Yeah, I didn't remember the Charlotte finding herself. If so, that's a pretty big big ruin for the reveal, which, damn you, HBO. It's because it's not even it's not even Westworld's production company. I feel like HBO separately assembles it. So that would be real sucky if they did that.
Yeah, way to go, HBO.
That was a big thing with Lost. What they kept like Damon and Carlson say, like, we don't do the promos. That's ABC puts those together. Don't get mad.
It was the dumbest thing. Every week.
I'll just get to the most interesting part for me. We know the post-credit scene was in the far future because the showrunner told us in many, many, many interviews. Oh, how I wish I didn't need an interview to let me know the end. I would have figured out with a little bit of extra text on the screen if they want it to be so blatant that they just can't speak about it in interviews. Then would a little 15 years later be so out of line? So William leaves the park, but they at some point make him a hybrid host, keep running the same fidelity test over and over for years. It always ends the same until whenever now is, I think we are seeing when he passed the test. Ed Harris, the last shot on his face was unbelievably epic. I know they didn't want to place an exact timestamp on anything because William asked how many times have you tested me, and she's answered it's been a long time, William, longer than we thought. I think that's really important in the post-credit sequence will be my 18-month Zapruder film to study. Too bad they say we won't see it next season. For some reason, I don't think we'll see the park very much at all next season. Are you happy we don't have Armistice anymore? We have Delori, but not really. Bernard did see the blood-soaked scalping instruments when he wakes up. Hale is someone else. Is it Teddy? Crackpot theory time. I wasn't going to, but this comes from my wife, my loving, caring wife. This poor woman, she works 40 plus hours a week and gets home to hey, baby, I heard a fart on a podcast today. What did you do? While I have her captive, let her know how much I love her. Anywho, I was upset in a corner crying about Elsie and Lee, and she said, they've been scanned. They're totes coming back. Don't be upset, brah. So there you have it. Lee, Elsie, and anyone else who died, they'll be back. We are humans. We don't learn our lesson. Good times this season, not blowing smoke, but Jack seemed pretty on point, and since he's the only one counting, let's take his word for it. Jay was great, mostly competent presenter, and Mitch is really coming to his own.
Oh, my God. He got the first letter right, the first two.
Also, the letters, it's been hard writing 3 feedbacks for every show as the review, but very rewarding. Until next time, Doppel, not Ethan. And he has some pictures here. This would be, with Lee dying, it's the last of the Mike Bloom superimposed on Lee, right?
But wait, hold on a second. Why am I the passenger on the horse?
Because I mean, let's be honest, you're more of a Sylvester.
The first picture is my face wearing again this Karate Kid headband that has made its way from Shogun World, much like Lee / Armistice, one of the Armistice, into this world. He actually put up a really fun one on the Jane Jack Facebook page, which is like one of those GIF face morphs of like Lee's dying face to my face. So I really enjoyed that. But the one that I really enjoy is the one I least expected, which is Jay and Jack as Felix and Sylvester on the horse together with arrows pointing to the two Armistice with the words when downwind and dead. So I think we know who Ethan is siding with on Fart Date here.
Too funny.
And also another picture of the 5 or 6 brain balls with the 3 of us, Colleen, and Shandy made her way in there.
Oh, man. I don't know how Shandy got in there, but whatever. It's fine. That's fine.
Great
she bought a T-shirt. I think she deserves it.
You're right.
Yeah, she
You're
did,
right.
yes.
Shandy doesn't deserve to be taken there. You're right.
I gotta say though, I look kind of creepy on this horse. Because you got your big head there. Your head is bigger than the body, Jay.
That's true. Well, it's tough. It's tough having a melon like this. All right, Ethan, thank you, as always. A fun part of our feedback section every single week. Well, you weren't every single week this season, but still.
Well, I don't know. If he is to be believed, it was every single week.
That's true.
He's like, he was the Ford of our Westworld podcast. Even when he wasn't there, exactly. He was there.
He was there. All right, that is it for listening to feedback. Thank you again to everybody that gave feedback this season. Always love what you all present. You all do a fantastic job theorizing and adding more flavor and context to the show than we do. So thank you, everyone, for contributing feedback for this season of the podcast. All right, Jack, it's time to close it out with a Season 2 finale, Jack's Crackpot Theory of the Week. Take it away.
I guess Dolores is going to try to destroy Delos. That's the only thing I can think of.
Oh, come on. Really? Of course she is.
Well, that's all I got. That's all I got.
See, and the thing is, like, then that'll happen, because it's obvious that it'll happen. Be like, cha-ching, baby, cha-ching.
Well, come on. Cha-ching, baby. If this show's not coming back for 3 years, like, I'm going to remember.
Yeah, you'll remember.
That's true. Yeah, we could completely reprogram Jack to say that he did something totally different.
Yeah. I don't remember what I said last week.
Jack, just scramble your memories so that you won't remember what happened. Then we're going to have to, like, when we come back for season 3, we're going to have to intercut scenes from our season 2 podcast to just confuse people even more. And then it'll get us back in the Westworld spirit.
Right, there we go. I don't know. I can't think of anything right now. Well, I don't know.
That's a great way to close it out, Jack. Good season.
You know what's going to happen? Someone will pick up what I say, put it on Reddit, and then they'll have to change the whole script around, and then we'll be looking at 2024 before the show comes back. So I think it's better that I don't give a great crackpot theory. So we have. I mean, do you want to wait till 2024, Jay? Should it come back? No.
If that's what
if you wait till 2024, the kid who played young Ford might become old man Logan by then.
So I think it's best for the sake of the show and the fans. I'm not going to give a great crackpot theory right now.
Okay.
Just because I don't want the show to be delayed any longer than it has to be.
Okay. All right.
There. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. That will do it for this finale episode of the season, as well as the finale of our season of this podcast. Gentlemen, as always, it's fantastic podcasting with you all. It was a lot of fun to talk about this season every single week for these past 10 weeks. I guess it's a spin-off podcast from this podcast, but I guess this season we'll kind of live on with the Fartgate true crime podcast about the couple fart sounds that showed up in our season. That'll be for our patrons. Again, I think the first episode will be on our patron only feed. Again, I think it's silly because it's clearly a digital distortion, but I guess they have different conspiracy theories around that. Jack has already recorded some stuff for that, so thank you, Jack, for, I guess.
Well, it took me like 10 seconds, so I was pretty...
But anyway, that should be a little fun off-season show there to check out. It won't be on this feed, but it'll be on the whole enchilada, and then for patrons only, whether you give $1 on up. And speaking of patrons, I want to thank all of our patrons. These shows would not be possible without your support. Whether you do give $1 or more, it all goes to mainly all of our podcasters, as well as the hosting fees, everything. So really, without your contributions, these shows would not exist. If you'd like to become a patron, you can do so today by going to patreon.com/JayandJack, or go to jayandjack.com and click on the Become a Patron link today. I want to especially thank Tack from Tokyo, Eckhart Richter, Molly the Millennial, Ed the Letter Carrier, and Maggie the Magnificent, as well as all of our patrons. There's a full list on jayandjack.com. We do other podcasts besides this Westworld one with Jay, Jack, and Mike. I guess our only other one that's on a show that's still around is the Stranger Things podcast, which I don't know when that's coming back. So,
well, that better come back soon too. They're going to be, like I said, in college or married. And...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Jack might be like 70 by the time the Jay, Jack, and Mike crew gets back together to record a podcast.
And I wouldn't hold out that I'll still be around, so they better finish this up quick.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if they've actually started filming that yet. So maybe I think it might be like we might be looking at like early 2019, which, you know, considering that it's only like half a year away, is not too bad. Yeah, exactly. But I'm sure.
What if someone had a suggestion for us to do a podcast? Could they suggest it? And if we agree, we'll do it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I think the three of us are always jonesing to get back together. I say this at the end of every season, but I'm so fortunate and happy that I got the opportunity to talk with you guys through this stuff amidst all the silly and the confusing. I feel like this really helped me personally understand the show, especially this season. So I just love getting to like talk things out with people, and I'm happy between the two of you and all the feedback that we got as well over the weeks. It was good to just sort of all put our brains together and try to figure out exactly what's going on, and of course be proven wrong the next week. But yeah, people have suggestions as to, I guess, shows past, present, future that might be in the vein of this type of stuff that you want us to cover. Depending on what it is, I'm sure we'd be happy to entertain the idea.
Mm-hmm. We have a blast.
A blasty blast, as the kids say. Yes, maybe something in the fall if Stranger Things doesn't come back, or the spring, whatever. It'll happen, I'm sure. And there's other podcasts on the network. You got Ramblecast is going strong. You have the broadcast is going strong as well. There's what else is going on right now, Jack, on the network? Did you guys finish up Dancing with the Stars?
That finished up like a month ago.
Oh, did it? Yeah. All I know is I'm excited right now for the return of Double Dare that returned tonight. We've been rewatching old episodes all week in the Glatfelter house. So
same host?
Mark Summers is he's the announcer kind of guy, and there's a new
he's the new Harvey. Because I mean, I know people were saying nostalgia, he should be there, but considering if you know that the behind the scenes information that Mark Summers is super OCD, and knowing that the personal hell he went through every day on that show,
does he still have the same issues?
He got better, but it's still he doesn't particularly like getting slimed and everything.
Yeah, right. So I'm assuming that it was part of his writer of don't put me through that again. It's like he'd be like William down in the basement. He'd be like, this is my hell loop that they.
When I found out slime every day. When he had that, I was like, how is he doing this show? How do you do the show? It's kind of amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. But I guess from what I understand, it got a lot better for him. Even when he did that Oprah interview, I think it's when it was revealed that he had these issues. But yeah, it looks cool. It looks exciting. And yeah, again, I was a big Nickelodeon fan growing up.
You could never go home again, Jay.
Well, watching with Zach's a lot of fun because it's kind of like I told him it's Survivor, but more kind of your speed, Did you
tell him?
It's not Survivor at all.
Well, I'm not saying, but the challenge. Zach's favorite part of Survivor is the challenges. Like it's the game, It's the game. So I'm like, the thing that you like most about Survivor is it's kind of you'll like Double Dare because it's challenges and stuff.
Did you tell him that Papa got slimed in Universal Studios?
Can tell him that tomorrow when you pick him up.
I didn't know you were watching the show, so
there you go. But yeah, that'll be Glatfelter summer TV viewing.
There's a good podcast to do.
Yeah, Double Dare. Let's dissect how we.
We can do what's his name's new show? The when they showed on Survivor.
Kevin Hart's TKO.
Yeah, there you go.
Listen, Jeff Probst had to kind of grimace through that plug. If he had to do that, I don't know how much we'd be able to.
There's summer TV for a reason.
Oh man, but anyway, it's been a lot of fun talking about this season of Westworld, and we'll be back whenever season 3 comes around. I'm excited. Maybe do a special interview with the actor who played Roland at some point. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And again, gentlemen, you guys are amazing podcasters to podcast with. And,
I agree. Mitch is pretty good.
Thank you, Germs.
And, speaking of Mitch, a.k.a. Mike Bloom, you podcast a hell of a lot more than we do, and I'm sure people will be able to check out some of the podcasts you do in the interim until we come back again.
Yeah, I spoke about summer TV, so the main thing I'm covering right now is Big Brother. I'm doing Exit Press every week on Parade with the most recently evicted house guest, so be sure to check that out. I'm also doing intermittent podcasts with the RHAP B&B, which is usually a Survivor podcast I do with Leon and Boris, but we're doing occasional Big Brother nonsense-filled content. We already put out a preseason podcast last week that I definitely recommend you guys check out, especially if you've never listened to the B&B before and you want to get a sense of what shenanigans we do. I'm also covering Survivor South Africa every week, which if you're a Survivor fan and you're jonesing for more Survivor content over the summer, the international editions, specifically South Africa and New Zealand, are putting out amazing stuff. So if you're looking for links, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to provide. Other than that, just sporadic stuff. I stream D&D every other week with TPK Games on Twitch, which is a lot of fun. I do the Hamster Factor every other week with AJ Mass, covering movies that he has seen and I haven't. And I write a bunch of random stuff for Parade and The Hollywood Reporter. Most recently, actually, on the day we're recording this, I got to get into the original Batcopter and ride that around at the State Fair at Meadowlands, which was really cool. It was my first time ever in a helicopter, and what a ride to start out on. So I have an article coming out that sort of talks about the history of it as well as my experience being in it.
Well, now I'm jealous. Thanks.
Now you're jealous?
I've never ridden in a helicopter yet. I'm jealous, Mitch.
No, thank you. Mitch's life is the most enviable one of all. But yeah, there should be a bunch of other, hopefully a lot of other fun, random pop culture things interspersed throughout. And then before we know it, the fall's going to hit, and we'll see if we're covering another show. If not, I'll be back on the Survivor beat, and we move forward from there. But I'm so happy that we got to do this and get back into the spurs of it all and put the boots back on, the Stetson and all that. I was wearing it, though I fear how much data it has taken of me and the things that this hat has watched me do.
The 10 weeks went by fast.
It did. It went by
because I look
fast.
for it every Sunday. I go, all right, Westworld's on tonight.
Yep.
Now I got nothing.
As we were watching, I was like, "Oh man, we're not doing a live show. We won't get to see Mike Blooms and share his hat with the world. Maybe next time.
Kind of a bummer.
Maybe we would have gotten lost in the move. I don't know. But all right, that is gonna do it for this season. That's a wrap. We'll see you all next time. Hasta luego and goodbye.
Bye.
Y'all come back now, you hear?